Rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to Iqra''s Timeless Stories of Ahlulbayt series. And tonight, inshaAllah, we will continue where we left off last week. We were discussing the lives of the four Muhammads of Ahlulbayt. We spoke about the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. We spoke about the life of the fifth Imam of Ahlul Bayt, Al-Imam Mohammad al-Baqir. And today, inshaAllah, we will speak about the life of the third Muhammad of Ahlul Bayt, and that is Al-Imam Muhammad al-Jawad, son of Imam Ali al-Ridha alayhi salam. Al-Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam is the ninth Imam of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. He was born in the city of Al-Madinah al-Munawwara during the month of Rajab of the year 195 after the hijrah of Rasulullah. His mother was a very noble mother. She was an African slave from northern Africa who Al-Imam al-Kadhim, the grandfather of Al-Imam al-Jawad, had purchased, freed, and then Al-Imam al-Ridha married her, and she gave birth to Al-Imam al-Jawad. Her name is either Sabika or Khayzuran. Now it's mentioned that the mother of Al-Imam al-Jawad, Sabika, was either a black slave or she was very dark colored. And this shows that Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam themselves were open to interracial marriages. That even if it might be a black person, a black lady who used to be a slave, none of that mattered for the Imams of Ahlul Bayt. What mattered to them was the iman and the piety of the person. So not only did they preach these ideas, but they also practiced them and they applied these teachings to themselves. It's one thing to believe as a Muslim that every Muslim that has iman and akhlaq is equal to me. It's one thing to believe in this in words, but then when it comes time to apply these teachings, I find myself that I cannot marry someone outside of my race, outside of the country of my origin, the country of the origin of my parents. And this is a challenge for many Muslims. It's a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You claim that you follow Ahlul Bayt. You claim that the Muslim ummah is one ummah and they're equal. And your brothers and sisters in Islam, if they have faith, they are your equal counterparts. But when it comes to marriage, this is unfortunately when our jahiliyyah tendencies change. This is when our jahiliyyah tendencies show and exhibit themselves. Al-Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam, Al-Imam al-Ridha alayhi salam shows that if someone has akhlaq, someone has taqwa, it doesn't matter what their skin color is and where they're from. So Sabika was an African slave that was freed and gave birth to Al-Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam. It is mentioned that his mother Sabika was from the family of Maria al-Qibtiyya. Who was Maria? One of the wives of Rasulullah. Maria al-Qibtiyya was a convert who converted to Islam from Christianity. She married Rasulullah and she gave birth to Ibrahim, one of the sons of Rasulullah that ended up dying at a young age. Now, this woman, Sabika, is so great that Rasulullah has been narrated to praise her. Can you imagine? Rasulullah, maybe 200 years before Al-Imam al-Jawad is born, Al-Imam al-Ridha narrates from his father, Al-Kadhim. Al-Imam al-Kadhim narrates Rasulullah. That Rasulullah one day spoke about the Imams of Ahlul Bayt. Each Imam that would come one after the other until he reached the ninth of Ahlul Bayt, Al-Imam al-Jawad. And he said this about him. He said, and you can find this in the book of Al-Kafi, بِأَبِي إِبْنُ خِيرَةِ الْإِمَاءِ. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, may I be sacrificed. And this is an Arabic expression to show high regard and high respect to someone. بِأَبِي وَأُمِّي. May my parents be sacrificed for this individual. بِأَبِي إِبْنُ خِيرَةِ الْإِمَاءِ. Who is the Prophet speaking about? The son who had a mother, and his mother was the best of slaves. And then he said, Ibnun Nawbiyyat al-Tayyibah, the son of the Nawbiyya. Nawbiyya are the individuals that come from northern Africa, the tribes of An-Nawb. They come from the areas of northern Africa. Ibn al-Nawbiyya al-Tayyibat al-Fam al-Muntajabat al-Raham. Rasulullah said that she will have a pure tongue, a pure mouth, meaning she will not use her mouth to disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, meaning that she is someone that has piety. She's someone who's virtuous, someone who is righteous. Al-Muntajabat al-Raham. And her womb has been chosen by Allah Azza wa Jal to carry the hujjah of Allah, al-Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam. So this shows that Rasulullah praised the mother of al-Imam al-Jawad, and she's a great woman. Now, this is the mother of al-Imam al-Jawad. His father is al-Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Ridha alayhi salam, and we already had an episode that we spoke about the life of Ali ibn Musa al-Ridha. Whoever didn't attend, I would recommend that you go back to that session. It's on YouTube, on the IIA accounts, and you can listen to the biography of Imam al-Ridha alayhi salam. When al-Imam al-Jawad was born, al-Imam al-Ridha made a remarkable statement. And this statement is reported in numerous hadiths, numerous books. He told more than one companion the statement. What did he say? For example, in the book of Al-Kafi, Abu Yahya al-San'ani, a companion of the 8th Imam, he says when al-Imam al-Jawad was born, they brought him to his father, al-Imam al-Ridha, and the Imam said these very remarkable and powerful words. He said, هذا المولود الذي لم يولد مولود أعظم بركة على شيعتنا منه. The Imam said that this newborn is a child who no child has been born more blessed for our Shia, upon our Shia than him. Very remarkable statement from the Imam. Al-Imam al-Ridha says about Imam al-Jawad that his birth is so blessed that there is no child that brought this much blessings to Islam, to the school of thought of Ahlulbayt like Imam al-Jawad. And thus the ulama have had discussions about these hadiths. What does Imam al-Ridha mean when he says that there is no child that has this much blessings like him? Does the Imam mean that Imam al-Jawad brought more blessings, he was more of a blessed child than Amir al-Mu'mineen? If he's saying no child, more than Rasulullah, Fatima al-Zahra, Imam Hassan, Hussein, he's the 9th Imam. 8 Imams before him, Imam al-Ridha says about his son, this child, there is no child that brought this much blessings upon the school of thought of Ahlulbayt. So what does this mean? Now obviously, Imam al-Ridha doesn't mean that Imam al-Jawad is better than the other Imams. No. Rasulullah, Imam Ali, Imam Hassan, Hussein, they're greater than Imam al-Jawad. So what does he exactly mean? Different opinions by the ulama. One opinion, and this is one of the most credible opinions regarding the birth of Imam al-Jawad and what the hadith of Imam al-Ridha means when he says this is the most blessed birth, the most blessed child upon the Shia of Ahlul Bayt. One opinion between scholars is that they say the birth of Imam al-Jawad could not have come at a better time for the school of thought of Ahlul Bayt. Why? Because at that time there was a strong movement that was trying to deny that Imam al-Ridha was an Imam. They were trying to shut down the lineage of Imam al-Kazim and stop the Imamah at the 7th Imam. And we talked about this when we discussed the life of Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Ridha alayhi salam. So with the birth of Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam, this proved as a refutation, as a reply to all those who believed in this movement called Al-Waqifiyya, all those that disbelieved in the Imam of the 8th Imam. Imam al-Jawad's birth solidified the Imamah of Imam al-Ridha alayhi salam. How? I'll explain that in a couple of minutes. So this is one opinion, that his birth brought many blessings because it was a time in which the Shia faith was challenged. And it was a time in which there was a split within the Shia faith. The child of Imam al-Ridha he ended that split and he brought unity back to the school of thought of Ahlulbayt. This is one opinion. I'll speak about this more in a couple of minutes. Another opinion from the ulama, they say that what was unique about Imam al-Jawad was that he was the first Imam of Ahlulbayt to assume the responsibilities of the Imam as a child. Imam al-Jawad was how old when he became the Imam? He was 7 years and 7 months. He becomes the Imam. This was unprecedented. All the other 8 Imams before him, they became Imams at an adult stage in their lives. Imam al-Jawad is a child. This served as another challenge for the Shia school of thought. Are they able to follow a child? Will the age be an obstacle that will prevent them from following the Imam that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has chosen? And what this served is that it served a great purpose. It served a great benefit for the 12th Imam. You see, because the Imams of Ahlul Bayt, one of the most important roles that they have is to prepare the Shia for the occultation of the 12th Imam, because this is going to be a difficult time, a time in which the Shia cannot meet their Imam, they cannot see their Imam. So they have to slowly prepare the Shia for that stage. Now, one issue that the Imams knew would come with the 12th Imam, so Imam al-Mahdi would be an Imam at the age of 5. Will the Shia accept an Imam who's 5 years old? This is difficult for them to accept. Imam al-Jawad came, and at age 7, he's the Imam. He proves that he's right. He's the rightful Imam. His Imamah, his birth and his Imamah would pave the way for the Imamah of the 12th Imam. If people can accept a 7-year-old as an Imam, the Shia, then they would easily accept the Imamah of the 12th Imam. And I'll also talk more about that in a couple of seconds. Let's go to the first opinion. Why was the birth of Imam al-Jawad so blessed? We have to back up a little. Go back to when Imam al-Kazim died, his grandfather. Imam al-Kazim dies, a movement erupts. A movement within the Shia school of thought, it begins to spread. What does this movement believe in? They believe that Imam al-Kazim is the final Imam. And his son al-Rida is not an Imam. So they only believed in 7 Imams. They were called al-Waqifiyya. Now, they claimed that Imam al-Kazim was the Mahdi. And he didn't really die. He went into an occultation. All these nonsense beliefs. Now, why did they say this? There was a lot of greed behind it. They had a lot of money that, they didn't want to pass over to Imam al-Rida. So there were some, obviously, selfish reasons for that. But they had a very powerful argument that they used against Imam al-Rida. What was it? Imam al-Kazim dies. Imam al-Rida is 35 years old and he has no child. So they ask him, they tell him, if you're the Imam, where's your son? Where are your children? Why don't you have kids? 35 was old back then. People were having kids at the age of 17, 18, 19, 20. So 35, you should be a grandpa by then. Imam al-Rida alayhi salam, 35, he doesn't have any children. So they use this against Imam al-Rida alayhi salam. The Imam is 40, he still doesn't have children. The Imam is 45, and he still doesn't have children. The more time that passes, the greater of an argument it becomes that the Waqifiyya use against Imam al-Rida. If you're an Imam, where are your children? There's a tradition that a Shaykh al-Saduq narrates. Uyun Akhbar al-Rida. He narrates the hadith from Al-Husayn ibn Qiyamah. Al-Husayn ibn Qiyamah was one of the heads of the Waqifiyya who rejected Imam al-Rida's Imamah. He comes to meet Imam al-Rida one day. It's been 11 years. Imam al-Rida is the Imam, no children. He comes to him and he tells him, are you an Imam? Imam al-Rida says, yes, by Allah, Allah has chosen me as the Imam. He replies to him, to Imam al-Rida, he says, by Allah, you're not the Imam. Allah is my witness that you are not the Imam of this time. Imam al-Rida puts his head down and he's very disturbed by this. And he tells him, why do you say this? Why are you rejecting my imamah? He says, because you have no children. And we have narrated from your grandfather, Al-Imam al-Sadiq, where your grandfather says, an imam cannot be barren. An imam cannot be childless. An imam has to have children. And it seems like you can't have children. You're 45, 46 years old. You've been the imam for 11 years now and still no child. Then how can you be the imam? The imam cannot be barren. So they even use the hadith of Al-Imam al-Sadiq against Al-Imam al-Rida. They cornered him. Al-Imam al-Rida, he told him, Wallahi, very soon Allah will give me a child. You will see. The plan of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will prove itself. It's not the time yet, but very soon, my son will be born. The narrator of this hadith says that exactly 10 or 11 months after this interaction, Al-Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam was born. Sabika was pregnant, and Al-Imam al-Rida gave birth to Al-Imam al-Jawad. Why was this birth so significant? Because they had used the fact that he had no child to disprove his imamah. So his birth could not have come at a better time for the madhab of Ahlulbayt. Because many people, they started having doubts by these accusations and misconceptions of the Waqifah. They started to sow doubt in the hearts of the Shia. If he is the imam, where's his son? How can he be the imam? He's not the imam. Obviously, he can't have children. And Imam al-Sadiq said, if you can't have children, you can't be the imam. So when the news came that Al-Imam al-Jawad is born, this ended all the false arguments of the Waqifiyya. That this man, Ali ibn Musa Rida, is not an imam. Why? Because he has a child now. So the birth of Al-Imam al-Jawad brought all these blessings, relief to the school of thought of Ahlul Bayt. It was support for the imamah of Al-Imam al-Rida. It solidified it, and it brought spiritual relief to the Shia of Ahlul Bayt. Once again, they were united. So you find that the Waqifiyya, this movement that eventually turned into a sect, it slowly started to die out, because now they saw, no, Al-Imam al-Rida has a child, and that is Al-Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam. Now, this is the first reason why the birth of Al-Imam al-Jawad itself was a great barakah, blessings upon the Shia of Ahlul Bayt. The second reason that we spoke about was that Al-Imam al-Jawad would pave the way for Al-Imam al-Mahdi. How? Al-Imam al-Rida alayhi salam finally has a son at age 46. And remember, Al-Imam al-Rida only had that one son. So Al-Imam al-Jawad did not have any siblings. He was an only child. Al-Imam al-Rida knows that he will die, and his son al-Jawad is young. And he will become the imam and assume the responsibilities as a young imam. Many Shia will have a hard time accepting that this young child is my imam. And this is exactly what happened. Al-Imam al-Rida died, and Al-Imam al-Jawad is only 7 years old, 7 years and 7 months. There's a hadith where one of the companions of Al-Imam al-Rida by the name of Al-Khayzarani, he says, I asked Al-Imam al-Rida one day, I told him, Sayyidi wa Mawlai, if you, may God prolong your life, but if you die, who's your successor? So Al-Imam al-Rida pointed at his son, Al-Imam al-Jawad. And Al-Imam al-Jawad used to be called Abu Ja'far. This was the title, the kunya of Al-Imam al-Jawad. Al-Imam al-Baqir's title was Abu Ja'far, and Al-Imam al-Jawad. Two Abu Ja'fars from the Imam. So Al-Imam al-Rida says, my son, Al-Imam al-Jawad. This companion, he sees Al-Imam al-Jawad as a child, maybe 5, 6, 7 when the story happened. So it's as if he belittled the age of Al-Imam al-Jawad, basically telling the Imam, this child, how can we follow this child? What if you die tomorrow? What if you die next week? Who will be the successor right after you? Al-Imam al-Rida alayhi salam, he told him, Allah Azza wa Jal chose Isa to be a prophet while he was a child, while he was a baby, a newborn. So why would it be too difficult for you to accept that my son al-Jawad would be chosen by Allah to be an Imam? Because at the end of the day, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to give knowledge and wisdom to a child, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can do that. It's not beyond the capacity and beyond the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Al-Imam al-Rida was trying to highlight this point, that there are lessons in the Quran. We have prophets, children, they would speak. As children, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose them. As, for example, Yahya. Allah also says that we chose him at a very young age and we gave him knowledge. وَأَتَيْنَاهُ الْحُكْمَ صَبِيًّا. He was a child and we gave him the knowledge. So Al-Imam al-Rida alayhi salam was preparing people, preparing his Shia, that do not let the age of Al-Imam al-Jawad be an obstacle. If he has knowledge, khalas, follow knowledge wherever it takes you. Al-Imam al-Rida dies. How old is Al-Imam al-Jawad? Almost 8 years old. The Shia of Ahlulbayt, the scholars, the important companions of Imam al-Rida, they gather at the house of Yunus ibn Abd al-Rahman, one of the greatest companions of Imam al-Rida. I spoke about him when we talked about Imam al-Rida. They gather in his house and they are completely paralyzed. They're so upset. They don't know what to do. They're confused. And they say, what should we do until al-Jawad grows up? We can't go and follow a 7-year-old child as our Imam. So we have to find someone to be the Imam, the temporary Imam, until al-Jawad is older. At least he's 16, 17. He's much more developed psychologically, mentally, physically, intellectually, spiritually, and then we can follow him. But we can't go and follow a 7-year-old boy. So this was a dilemma for them. What do we do? Al-Imam al-Rida told us, it will be al-Jawad, okay, we accept him, but not now. Let him grow up and we'll follow him. So, what did they do? A group of 80, the hadith says, of the ulama of the Shia and the greatest companions of Al-Imam al-Rida. They made an envoy, they went to Al-Madinah al-Munawwara to try to find a replacement, a temporary replacement that can serve as the Imam. And then once Al-Imam al-Jawad grows, okay, we'll go to him. They go to the house of Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam. Imam al-Sadiq had passed away. They go to his house and they see that the son of Imam al-Sadiq, they see the son of Imam al-Kazim, Abdullah ibn Musa. So the brother of Imam al-Rida by the name of Abdullah, he's sitting in the house and he's claiming that he is right now the most knowledgeable scholar of Ahlulbayt. So he tells them, come to me. You have any questions? You need guidance? I will be that individual that will lead you during this stage. So his age is good. Maybe he's in his 30s, 40s. Okay, so that's good. But then, what was special about the Shia school of thought, and I want you, brothers and sisters, to appreciate being Shia. Our grandparents and our forefathers, and especially the early Shia, they did not follow the Imams blindly simply because their parents followed the Imams. The Shia school of thought, brothers and sisters, what makes it unique, anytime an Imam dies, even though they had clear orders that the next Imam is Fulan, but they would not submit to the next Imam unless they saw miracles from the next Imam, unless they tested the knowledge of the next Imam. If they saw that this next Imam was knowledgeable, he had knowledge similar to his father, then they would follow him. It wasn't just a family thing. We follow Ali ibn Musa al-Rida, and then he dies, his son, and then his son. You see some people, he loves a scholar. Scholar dies, he loves his son. Son dies, loves his grandson. Right? It's just a family thing. Even if the grandson has no ilm, fortunately you find this in the Muslim countries. There are individuals, self-proclaimed scholars, who have no ilm, but they live off the legacy of their father. My father was a marja'. My father was a great man. And because I'm his son, and people like sheep, they follow him, unfortunately. This was never how the Shia of Ahlul Bayt were. The Shia of Ahlul Bayt, anytime they were told to follow someone, they would test the knowledge of this individual. Even when they have a clear instruction from Imam al-Rida that my Khalifa is al-Jawad, they had to test him first. How can I go and blindly follow a young child? Let me see. Does he have knowledge? I follow him. He doesn't have knowledge, I'll look for the a'lam. And thus, you find that within the school of thought of Ahlul Bayt, the Imam of your time has to be the most knowledgeable person on earth. If you find someone more knowledgeable than the Imam of your time, then you're following the wrong Imam. And this is one of the proofs and evidences and arguments that we make for Imam Ali. Why is Imam Ali the Khalifa of Rasulullah? Why was he the Imam right after the Prophet? Because he had the most knowledge. Because he had more knowledge than the first Khalifa, second Khalifa, and third Khalifa combined. How can the Imam be someone who's ignorant, someone who is not the most knowledgeable? So you always follow wherever knowledge takes you. This is logical, right? And that's why, by the way, the same concept when it comes to taqleed and marji'iyya, there's many maraji'. Which marji' do we follow? You're always told, follow the a'lam, the most knowledgeable. Why? Because this is the same tradition as the early Shia. We follow knowledge wherever it takes us. I don't care which marji', which country he's from, how long his beard is, how advanced his website is. All of this doesn't matter. Because I follow the right criteria, and the right criteria is where the knowledge is. Whichever marji' has the most knowledge. Now, how do I know that he's the most knowledgeable? That's another discussion. But the point is, the right criteria is you follow the one that has the most knowledge. He's my marji'. That's the most important criteria. The Shia of Ahlul Bayt, they followed the same tradition. So, going back to the story of Al-Imam al-Jawad. Abdullah ibn Musa says, I will be the Imam. Come to me. They go to him, Yunus ibn Abdul Rahman, and all these great companions. They were all scholars themselves. They say, okay, we have to test you. If your knowledge is similar to the knowledge of Al-Imam al-Sadiq, al-Baqir, because we have hadiths from your grandfathers, if you are able to prove that you have their knowledge, we'll follow you. He says, yes, go ahead. They ask him one question. They have the hadith in front of them. Someone asked Al-Imam al-Sadiq, he gave this answer. They ask Abdullah ibn Musa, the son of Imam al-Kadhim, he gives a completely different answer. They tell him, come on, are you making this answer up? Give us the answer of Ahlul Bayt, the Imams of... How's your answer conflicting with Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam? This doesn't make sense. Okay, ask me another question. They ask him another question, he answers wrong again. Another question, wrong again. They come out of the house of Imam al-Sadiq even more devastated. They're in more despair. They say, the son of Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam, we cannot follow him. See, if it was about blindly following that family, khalas. Follow Abdullah, son of Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam, right? He's from that family, his age is good, and just blindly follow him. No, they said, we will not follow you because you don't have the knowledge. We're not going to blindly follow you. So then they were even more confused. What do we do? What do we do? La ilaha illallah, al-Jawad is young. All of a sudden, someone by the name of Muwaffaq, he comes and he tells them, there is no reason for you to be so confused. For I will take you to the source of knowledge. I will take you to the source of ilm, someone that has the knowledge of all of his grandfathers. They tell him who? He tells them, come, let me take you to Abu Ja'far al-Jawad. They say, Imam al-Jawad, the 7-year-old. He says, yes, come and ask him any question you want, and then you judge him. Don't judge a book by its cover. Don't judge a child simply because he's young. Test him. If he proves that he doesn't know the answers, then use the child card. With the Imams of Ahlul Bayt, Allah gives them the knowledge. It doesn't matter what the age is. Allah can give you all the knowledge one day if He wants. You don't have to go to school for 20, 30 years if Allah wants to divinely inspire all that knowledge to someone just like Isa. They say, okay, fine. They go, they enter a room, they see Al-Imam al-Jawad. Imagine a 7-year-old boy. But he had so much majesty, so much haiba, so much aura. They sat in front of him. Imagine, it's an intimidating scene. Al-Imam al-Jawad, a young boy, he's in front of 80 of the greatest Shia scholars. Based on today's standards, they're all maraja'. They're all at those high levels of ijtihad. They tell him, okay, you're ready to be the Imam? Yes, your father said you'll be the Imam, but you're young. But let's see your knowledge. They ask him one question. They see the Imam answers exactly as Al-Imam al-Sadiq answered. Second question, exactly as Al-Imam al-Baqir answered. Third question, exactly as Al-Imam al-Kadhim. Fourth question, they see that his knowledge was 100% similar to the knowledge of his father, Ali ibn Musa Rida alayhi salam. They say, you are the Imam of our time. We believe in you. This is when they gained confidence in Al-Imam al-Jawad. And they realized that age is irrelevant with Ahlulbayt. Whether he's 100 or 1. If Allah has chosen him to be the Imam, age doesn't matter anymore. Because now it's from the matters of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Before Al-Imam al-Jawad, this was never clear for the Shia. Because all the Imams were adults. So obviously you could say, well, they went to school, they were smart, they were intelligent, they were geniuses, this, that. Right? But what about Imam al-Jawad, 7-year-old boy? This doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense naturally. But through Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, everything's possible. So they started to believe in Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam because they saw that he has the knowledge. Now, word began to spread about Al-Imam al-Jawad at such a young age. Allah has given him so much knowledge. So Al-Ma'mun was the Khalifa. Imam al-Jawad is where? Medina. Ma'mun is in Khurasan, Mashhad. So Al-Ma'mun summons Al-Imam al-Jawad to Khurasan. Al-Imam al-Rida was summoned and he was forced to be the crown prince and then he was killed by Al-Ma'mun. Now he brings Al-Imam al-Jawad. He brings him all the way from Medina to Khurasan. The Imam is now about 9 years old. So this is a year and a couple of months after he's the Imam. He's still a child, 9-year-old child. He summons Al-Imam al-Jawad and he starts. Now Al-Ma'mun, what was unique about him is Al-Ma'mun was not an ignorant person. He was a knowledgeable scholar himself. He was devious, unfortunately, because of his love of dunya and love for power. But he was very knowledgeable. I've even seen he had certain debates with 40 scholars. Imagine Al-Ma'mun versus 40 Sunni scholars, and he would defeat them because he had learned how to debate from Al-Imam al-Rida alayhi salam. He used to pretend to be a Shia of the Ahlulbayt alayhi salam. So Al-Ma'mun is not a normal man. He has a lot of knowledge. He summons Al-Imam al-Jawad. He has some discussions with him. He sees, no, this child has more knowledge than me, similar to his father. Now he wants to give him a platform like he gave a platform to his father. What does he do? He calls on the chief judge of the Muslim Ummah. They call him Qadi al-Qudat, Yahya ibn Aktham. He's the highest ranking judge, scholar that works for the government. He tells him, come, I want you to debate someone. He says, yes, who do you want me to debate? He says, and I want you to bring all your scholars with you, the lower scholars. He says, okay, I have 40 scholars with me. They all work with me. I'll bring them. Who are we going to debate? He tells him, Al-Jawad, Ali ibn Musa Rida. How old is he? He says he's 9. He says, are you mocking me? You want me to come with my white beard, sit in front of hundreds of people in your court, and you want me to debate this child, this ignorant child? You're making a fool out of me. He tells him, no, I'm not making a fool out of you. I'm telling you, this child is not like any other child. And to prove it to you, have a debate with him and see his knowledge. Yahya ibn Aktham wasn't convinced. He thought still, this is a waste of time. Imam al-Jawad's just a kid, what does he know? So he tells him, test him and prepare a difficult question for him in any matter of faith and see his knowledge. Yahya ibn Aktham comes, he sits on one chair, it's like a debate. Al-Imam al-Jawad on another chair. Al-Ma'mun is sitting and there's hundreds of people watching. So Yahya ibn Aktham, he asks Al-Imam al-Jawad. He tells him, should I start, Ya Aba Ja'far, or you want to start? Al-Imam al-Jawad says, no, you start. It's a 9-year-old child against like a 60-year-old man. He thinks, let me ask him something very difficult. And then he chooses this question. He says, ما تقول في محرم قتل صيدا. He asks a fiqh question. jurisprudential question about Hajj and Umrah. What is it? He says, what do you say, what is the verdict, the law, concerning someone who's in the state of ihram, but he kills an animal? He hunts an animal. Now, why does he ask this? Because if you've been to Hajj or Umrah, there are 25, 26 prohibited acts you can't do when you're in the state of Umrah or Hajj. One of them is hunting, no killing animals. Leave the animals alone. Let's say someone does kill an animal. What applies here? What's the law? Is there an expiation? Is his Hajj batil? He has to redo his Hajj, he has to pay a fine. What is it? Now, most of us, if not every single one of us, if I ask you now, you have no idea what the answer is. Does anyone know what the answer is? Naam? What's the kafara? Kharoof? Okay, listen to the answer of Imam al-Jawad. He asked Imam al-Jawad this question. He thought Imam al-Jawad was going to give him an answer like one of the answers we heard, right? Idbah kharoof. Look at what Imam al-Jawad said. Imam al-Jawad gave a mesmerizing answer. The Imam told him, your question isn't too clear. Why? He says, because it depends. Your question has to give more context. It depends. The Imam told him, was this person who hunted and killed the animal, was he in the haram, meaning in Mecca or outside of Mecca? The answer is different. Was it at night or day? The answer will depend. Did he do it intentionally or by accident he killed an animal? Did he know that it's haram for him to kill an animal or not? Each one of these has a different answer. You can't just give one answer, one size fits all. No. He says, was he doing Hajj or Umrah? It depends. There's a different answer depending on each one of them. Was it his first time hunting or second time hunting? The answer will be different. Did he feel guilty after he did it or he didn't? The ulama, even the fatwa now, if you see, they say that the kafara will differ depending on your remorse. If you have remorse or not. Subhanallah. Imam al-Jawad tells him that. He tells him the animal that he kills, what type of animal is it? Is it large? Is it small? Does it fly? Does it not fly? Is it an animal, land animal, sea animal, or flying animal? The Imam begins to ask him question after question. Yahya ibn Aktham, he's dumbfounded. He doesn't even know what Imam al-Jawad is saying. And then the Imam tells him, you didn't indicate which one of these scenarios, so let me answer you. He tells him, if it was in Hajj, this is the kafara. If it was in Umrah, this is the kafara. If it was night, this is the kafara. If it's day, this is the kafara. If it was intentional, the kafara is this. If it's accident, the kafara is that. If he knew, kafara this. If he didn't, kafara that. If it was a bird, this is the kafara. If it was a land animal, this is the kafara. If he was in Mecca, this is the kafara. If he was outside Mecca, this is the kafara. If he had knowledge that this is haram, the kafara will be more than if he didn't know that he was in Mecca. And the Imam begins, they say that from this one question, the Imam gave him 1,400 answers. Yahya ibn Aktham was embarrassed. He started sweating. I belittled this child. He knows much more than me. He made a fool out of Yahya ibn Aktham. Yahya ibn Aktham didn't know what to say. Such that they say that people in the city for years, they would make fun of Yahya ibn Aktham. When they see him in the street, they used to tell him, hey, what do you say about someone who kills an animal in Hajj time or in Ihram? And they used it like a meme, against him. This is the kafara, the Ihram guy or the hunting guy. They made fun of him because a 9-year-old child, he embarrassed Yahya ibn Aktham. And then, I don't have time to get into this, so the Imam said, now it's my turn. The Imam started to ask him questions. Every single question he asked him, Yahya ibn Aktham had no idea. And one of the questions, I'll just mention the question, but the answer is a very long answer, but you guys will have to research it on your own. The Imam told him, I'm going to ask you a question. It's a legal question, but it sounds like a riddle. Tell me how a man wakes up in the morning, he looks at a woman, the look is haram. in the morning. Then at dhuhr time, he looks again, but it's a halal look. It's a look with lust, but it now becomes halal. Then afternoon, he looks for the third time, and it's haram. And then before Maghrib, he looks for the fourth time, it's halal. And then at Maghrib, he looks for the fifth time, it's haram. And then after Maghrib, he looks for the seventh time, it's haram. Yani the law keeps on changing 7 times within one day. Tell me how. Now one answer is obvious. The first look, he wasn't married to her. The second look, he married her, so it's halal. Then he divorced her, it's haram. Okay, that's 3. But how am I going to get 4 more scenarios? What is it? It's not haram to look at your spouse with lust if you're fasting. It's haram no, it has nothing to do with fasting. Anyway, like I said, it requires a long answer. The Imam asks him this question, he has no idea. The Imam tells him, I'll tell you exactly how. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. He gives him the answer. And then he asks him a second question, a third question. The Imam comes out from that debate as a champion. Not only was Imam al-Ridha known for his knowledge, now his 9-year-old child is more knowledgeable than the 60-year-old chief judge who's supposed to be like the grand mufti of the nation. So the Shia of Ahlulbayt are filled with pride that this is our Imam. We don't follow this Imam simply because he's from this lineage, or simply because he's a Sayyid, or because his father was Fulan. No, we follow him because he has the merits, because he himself has that knowledge. Al-Ma'mun is fascinated at Al-Imam al-Jawad. Eventually he asks Al-Imam al-Jawad to marry his daughter, al-Fadl. And not only does he ask him, he forces him. He pressures him into marrying him. And al-Fadl was not a good wife. 2 of the Imams of Ahlul Bayt, unfortunately, had terrible wives. Wives that didn't love their husbands. Aslan, they hated their husbands. And they had animosity towards Ahlul Bayt. Al-Imam al-Hasan, the son of Amir al-Mu'mineen, his wife Ju'da, who ended up poisoning her husband. And the second one, al-Fadl, the wife of Al-Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam. But Al-Ma'mun, he forced Al-Imam al-Jawad to marry him, and she served as a spy for her father, the Khalifa, in the house of her own husband. Now, Al-Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam, he becomes Imam at the age of 7. He would continue to be the Imam for how many years? For approximately 17 years. He would lead the Shia, he would guide them, he would answer their questions in Medina. But once again, unfortunately, the authorities, Bani al-Abbas, they began to restrict the scholarly work of Al-Imam al-Jawad. Remember I said last sermon, Al-Imam al-Baqir, what was unique about his time? There was relative freedom, right? There wasn't that much restrictions from the government. He could freely teach. He was easily accessible. That's why so many people came. They studied with Al-Imam al-Baqir, and he began to disperse the knowledge of Ahlul Bayt. That was a very short time. Imam al-Baqir, Imam al-Sadiq, Imam al-Kadhim, it got tougher. Imam al-Ridha, it got a little better. Now Imam al-Jawad, once again, it became very difficult. And thus you find that Imam al-Jawad was constantly being surveilled by the authorities. So the Shia were afraid, many of them, to even go and meet the Imam, because you can get in trouble. Why are you visiting the house? You know, I heard stories that in Iraq, in the city of Najaf, during the time of Saddam, you could be in trouble if you go and visit the Marja, like a Sayyid al-Khou'i. Just go and visit him. Go and visit a Sayyid al-Sistani. This was during the time of Saddam. The eyes would be on you. Who's this person? What's his relationship with them? What does he want? So people would be discouraged from visiting the Maraja. Some days they would sit the whole day, not a single person would visit because of the fear factor. So Imam al-Jawad, same thing. That's why you see most or many of the traditions that we have from Imam al-Jawad were not verbal exchanges. Rather, they were letters. Someone sends a letter from another city somehow to Imam al-Jawad. Imam al-Jawad writes the answer and he sends it back. And in the vocabulary of Ahlul Bayt, this is called tawqi'at. Tawqi' in Arabic means what? Signature, right? But in the vocabulary of Ahlulbayt, it means the letters of the Imams. They were called at-tawqi'at. This culture of letters began with Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam. And then Imam al-Hadi, same thing. He was also taken to Samarra, not easily accessible. Many of the hadiths we have, letters. Imam al-Hasan al-Askari, letters. Imam al-Mahdi is an occultation. Small ghaiba, the only way to communicate with Imam al-Mahdi is through the letters. Thus we have so many letters from Imam al-Mahdi that he would write the answers to the questions and people would ask him all sorts of questions through letters. So this wasn't something new. Imam al-Jawad, many of the traditions that we have from him were letters, in the form of letters. For example, one of the most notable of those letters was a question that was sent by one of his companions by the name of Muhammad ibn al-Hasan al-Ash'ari. Who is this narrated by? Ali ibn Mahziyar. Ali ibn Mahziyar was one of the greatest companions of Imam al-Jawad. He was his representative in Ahwaz. Ahwaz is in southern Iran today. He was the representative of Imam al-Jawad in Ahwaz. He sends a letter while he's coming back from Hajj, or while he's in Hajj, or during the time of Hajj. He sends a letter, or he narrates this hadith, where he says one of the Shia wrote a question and he sent it to Imam al-Jawad. What was the question? It was regarding khums. Khums wasn't very clear. What's the extent of khums, the 1/5, 20% that we pay as khums? Imam al-Jawad was asked in this hadith, Akhbirni, this Shia guy, he's asking Imam al-Jawad in a letter, the Imam replies in another. He says, Akhbirni anil khums. I'm asking you about khums. أعلى جميع ما يستفيده الرجل من قليل وكثير. Does khums apply to everything that the human being, that the person acquires, that the person makes, whether small or large, all types of gain? And then he says, وعلى جميع من جميع الضروب وعلى الصناع. He says, even if you're a craftsman, يعني you're not a businessman, you're not selling and buying stuff. No, you provide services, like you're a blacksmith, you're a carpenter, you're a tailor. Even if I'm one of these individuals, I have to pay khums. Who exactly does khums apply to? And listen to the answer of Imam al-Jawad. Ali ibn Mahziyar says, فَكَتَبَ بِخَطِّهِ. He wrote with his handwriting, Al-Khums applies to all these individuals that you asked about. All of them. The Imam just mentioned one condition about khums. Al-Khums ba'd al-ma'una. That your 1/5, 20%, you calculate it after your expenses. Meaning, someone makes $50,000 a year. Does he have to pay 20% of the entire $50,000? No. Your expenses, whatever you need to live, they are exempted. Only the savings. And the Imam says that through these words. Ba'd al-ma'una. Ma'una is what you need, your expenses. So after you take out your expenses, what's left? Pay 20% as khums. This is one hadith. There's another hadith, also Ali ibn Mahziyar. He asks the Imam about khums. He tells him that some Shia, they deny khums. And unfortunately, I hear until this day, some Shia say khums doesn't apply. It's not true. Al-Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam, he says every year in that hadith. It's also narrated by Ali ibn Mahziyar. It's an authentic hadith. He says every year, people have to pay 20% from everything that they make. Any profit that you make and you don't spend in your expenses. And then the Imam gives examples. He gives like 6 or 7 examples of different profits that you make. So these were one of the important and notable letters that Imam al-Jawad highlighted. Seems like there was a time of confusion. Does khums apply? Does it not? Imam al-Jawad in 3 or 4 letters, he makes and reiterates and emphasizes this point that khums is the haqq of Ahlulbayt alayhimus salam. And it applies to everyone. There is no person who's khums exempt. The only person who doesn't pay khums is a person who's poor. It's a person that doesn't have money. It's a person who spends everything that he has because he can barely make enough for what is, he barely makes what's enough for him. And finally, Al-Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam was summoned twice to Baghdad. He lived in Medina, but within these 17 years that he was Imam, he was summoned twice to Baghdad. Once by Al-Ma'mun, when he had him debate Yahya ibn Aktham, and another time he was summoned when he was 24 years old, the last year of his life. The Khalifa now is Al-Mu'tasim, not Al-Ma'mun. Al-Mu'tasim is the brother of Al-Ma'mun. Al-Mu'tasim was developing resentment against al-Jawad because he heard so much praise about him. And remember, these khulafa, they could not tolerate anyone else being praised besides them. I have to receive all the praise, not someone else. So they were very insecure about this, especially if it was one of the Ahlulbayt. So he's hearing about al-Jawad, and he had, unfortunately, some of his advisors and some corrupt scholars who didn't like Imam al-Jawad. They kept on talking negatively about Imam al-Jawad until he forced Imam al-Jawad to move to Baghdad from Medina. And he put him kind of under house arrest so that he could be monitored. Who else was building more and more resentment against Imam al-Jawad? His wife. Why? Because his wife was barren. She could not have kids. You know, one reason that Al-Ma'mun wanted Al-Jawad to marry his daughter, because he wanted a grandson. He would join both sides, the Alawis and the Abbasids, right? So khalas, everyone's gonna follow us because he's a grandson of Al-Jawad and Al-Ma'mun. He wanted a grandson from him. But Allah Azza wa Jal didn't allow this to happen. His wife would not be pregnant. Now, this is one of those cases when my wife can't be pregnant, what does a man do? With all due respect to sisters, but this is the Islamic. You marry a second wife, right? My wife can't have children. So Imam al-Jawad went and married another woman. And Imam al-Jawad had 5 children. One of them Imam al-Hadi. They were not from al-Fadl because she could not have children. So every time Imam al-Jawad has a child from his other wife, her jealousy and her envy and her hatred and animosity grows, until finally, when Imam al-Jawad is in Baghdad, he's 24 years old, she meets her uncle, Al-Mu'tasim, the Khalifa. And they conspire together to kill Imam al-Jawad. Wal-'iyadhu billah. Some narrations state that it was his own wife that hid the poison in his food. Can you imagine Imam al-Jawad comes back home and she puts food on the table, on the floor for him to eat, and she's put poison in the food of Imam al-Jawad. Some other reports indicate, no, it was someone else that the Khalifa sent. Anyway, Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam, far away from home in Baghdad, not only is he under house arrest, or he's under, and he can't leave the city, he can't leave that neighborhood, that area. Imam al-Jawad is given that poison and he dies as a 25-year-old. How old is a 25-year-old? Some 25-year-olds today are still kids. Still don't know how to do anything. They're just thinking about, oh, what the future is going to hold for me. Imam al-Jawad, he completed his legacy at age 25. What does that show you, brothers and sisters? It's not about how many years Allah gives you. It's about what you do with those years. Some of the greatest scholars of all time that we have, they lived such short lives. 40 years, 45 years, 47 years. But when you look at their achievements and their legacy, you would think they lived 100 years. Because they used to take advantage of every minute that Allah gave them. So Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam is a role model for all of us, but especially for the youth. That you can reach, obviously, not the levels of the Imams, but you can reach much higher levels at a younger age. And he concluded his life at the age of 25. The youngest Imam of Ahlulbayt to die was Imam al-Jawad. Can you imagine how much knowledge and wisdom he would have given and brought to this world had he lived and they allowed Imam al-Jawad to live another 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. But at age 25, the representative, the hujjah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is poisoned to death. And the Imams that came after him, all of them, they died young. None of them, they lived more than 50 years. So Imam al-Jawad died, was killed in the city of Baghdad. He was taken and buried next to his grandfather, Al-Imam Musa al-Kazim alayhi salam. And if you go to Al-Qazwini today in Baghdad, you see two beautiful domes. One, the dome of the grave of Imam al-Kazim, and the other of Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us the tawfiq that we are able to learn from the lessons of Imam al-Jawad, that we are able to visit the grave of Imam al-Jawad and his grandfather Imam al-Kazim in Al-Qazwini. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us the shafa'ah of Muhammad and al-Muhammad in the next life. هذا وآخر دعوانا